Hey solos, so you're planning a Disney World vacation by yourself. How do you even choose a hotel? Well, here's a little solo spoiler for you. You choose it based on vibes and price. Hi everyone, I'm Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do. And welcome to Solo Magic, the podcast about the magic of going to Disney World solo. In this episode, it's kind of a part B from Monday's episode, in which I talk about the kind of lay of the world. Like the layout of Walt Disney World, and I really emphasize that you should think of it as a city-size hotel. So how do you choose your hotel within this city-size hotel? In this episode, I'm going to talk about the qualities of all the Disney hotels, and then talk about the three different categories and what distinguishes them, so you can start thinking about what type of hotel you'd be interested in and narrow it down accordingly. I'm not going to talk about all of the individual resort hotels. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is do a whole series in the summer where I'm talk about all the individual value and moderate hotels. But in this episode, I'm just going to talk about the categories of hotels. And here's another little solo spoiler, which I'm sure I will mention later on. I've actually recorded this episode twice. The sound did not work for either of them. So I'm really quite interested to see what comes out this time of doing this episode, because what I've learned from recording it twice is that I know a lot of, quote, unnecessary details about the hotels. So I'm just going to focus on those kind of big picture details and try not to get in the weeds like I may have in other versions of this episode. Please make sure you follow me on Instagram, Disney_solo_magic, and connect with me. Let me know what your favorite hotels are. And please make sure you subscribe to the podcast so other people know about it. Please share it around as well, because I really want to build this conversation about solo travel, and I really want to get other people's experiences with these hotels. Okay, I think that's it. Let's get into it. So I love hotels. I love them. I love hotels. I will travel for work or whatever, and I will get to a hotel and I will walk in the room, and inevitably I will text somebody in my life and say, I'm going to swear right now. I won't swear. Okay, anyway. I do swear in the text, but I'm not going to use a swear word because I've marked this as a clean show. I will text my friend or a family member and I will say, I freaking love hotels. I love how hotels are so logical, and so everything is there for you and it's easy, like you're taken care of. So there's always things that are around that will accommodate your needs, or at least, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, respect the fact that you have needs. Like, for example, they might not have the things that you want in their particular like drugstore, but they will be a very friendly staff member that will be like, oh, you can just go down the block and there's a CVS or a Shoppers Drug Mart and they can get you what you want. Like, oh my gosh, I just love hotels. So I have realized in, like I said, recording this episode twice, that I have gathered in my brain a lot of information about Disney hotels. And not necessarily about the individual ones, because like I already was like, hold it back, Samantha, you can't do all the individual ones in that episode. But I realized that like the categories I quite know a lot about. And so I want to share those things with you, because even though a lot of people are like, oh, I never spend time in the room, it's not a big deal, I actually think like where you end up at the beginning of the day or at the end of the night, and where you wake up in the beginning of the day really does kind of shape the overall vibe of your vacation. And especially when you're by yourself, you want to be someplace that you feel safe, obviously, you feel comfortable. And when you're only making a decision for yourself, you might realize that you have different criteria than if you were going with your family or if you were going with friends. And I think a large part about solo travel is really like understanding and distinguishing what makes a hotel room, for example, or any sort of elements of travel important to you? Like really figuring out like what are those criteria of things I like? Because if you haven't spent a lot of time thinking about things that you like or being able to like do the things you like because of, just like family and friends and you got a whole big busy thing around you, then being able to really being able to travel by yourself and then really able to think about what are the things that I like in a hotel or any part of the vacation, I think is like an important thing to get to it, right? So I know that I like hotels generally, as we've established, but like the elements of the hotel is important to me. So even though I could stay at a very, very nice Airbnb, for example, this is just, again, normal travel. I want the security, I want the organization of a hotel with a front desk, etc., etc. I also know that I don't mind spending money on a hotel room because I do think it is an important place for a base, but that if the money could go towards that room, could go towards other things, that I would rather not pay so much for a hotel room if I can also have like a very fancy meal. And that is why I have never been to a deluxe resort at Disney. Although if you would like to take me, I would be happy to go with you. Or if you just want to send me, because this is a solo travel podcast, if you just want to send me to the deluxe resort, let me try it out. I can talk about it. I am into that. But like for me, especially going by myself, right? So I'm not splitting the cost with somebody else. I would much rather pay $200, $300 for a room than $600, $700, $800, $900 for a room, even though I'm sure that the deluxe resorts are worth that extra money, and I've spent time in the deluxe resort, so I know that they are beautiful. But again, for me, especially because I'm not splitting the cost, it is just not for me a good value for my money. Not to say I don't want it to not be a good value for my money. Does that make sense? Like if those rooms were affordable, I would do them. But also because I'm Canadian, that every time I look at the cost when I'm doing a search, I have to like add the exchange rate, and all of a sudden it's like, wah, wah, wah. Anyway, whatever, please send me to a deluxe resort. So I go to value resorts and moderate resorts. And moderate resorts are usually like the hotel category that I like to be in. And if I wasn't going to Disney as frequently as I have been going the last 2 years, I would always just stay at a moderate resort. But like I'm doing a weekend trip coming up, and to make financial sense of an impromptu trip to Disney World, I was like, just stay at one of the All-Stars. Like, just save the money on the hotel because you want to do other things. Whereas if it's like a week-long trip, for example, then I will stay at a moderate. So moderate is definitely my favorite category. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's just talk about the categories generally. There are 3 categories. There is actually 4 categories. And those categories are value, moderate, deluxe. And then the 4th category is deluxe villas. And so I usually just conflate that with the deluxe. And I assume that, you're not necessarily looking for a villa if you're traveling by yourself. Although solos, we could get a big villa. We could just get a big villa and do a whole big, let's check out this villa as solo travelers. We won't look at each other. We won't talk to each other, but we will be in one of those Polynesian villas over the water. Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah. Okay, anyway, hashtag dreams. The deluxe villas also have studio suites, actually, but I'm just going to conflate deluxe and deluxe villas together. There are also Disney Vacation Club, DVC hotels, or DVC hotels primarily, but you can usually get rooms at those hotels when you're booking as well, and they count as deluxe resorts. So I'm not necessarily going to talk about the Disney Vacation Club, which is the timeshare. So there are the 3 categories of hotel: value, moderate, and deluxe. And I am suggesting that you choose a hotel based on your price point, and based on vibes. I would not choose a hotel based on location necessarily, because the closer a hotel is to a park, the more expensive it gets. So if a deluxe hotel is in your price range, that's wonderful. Then choose based on the vibe of the hotel and perhaps the location of the hotel that makes the most sense to you. But, if you don't have a deluxe budget and you're still trying to figure out like, well, I want to be close to this and this and this, don't worry about location, because even the deluxe resorts, like you could be walking distance from Magic Kingdom, which is the case for 3 hotels, but you're not in that same hotel. You're not walking distance to Epcot or to Hollywood Studios or to Animal Kingdom. And if you're walking distance to Epcot, you aren't walking distance to Magic Kingdom. Like you might be close to one park because you're in a deluxe resort, but that doesn't mean you're close to all the parks. So I think actually, unless you have like specific things that you're looking for, location should not be a huge criteria for you. Instead, like I said, the vibes of the place should be. Now, if you're worried, like, oh, well, if I stay in a value resort versus a deluxe resort, I'm not going to get a lot of things. I'm not going to get the same amount of things. Here's the thing. Well, okay, I've had this conversation with my mother quite a bit. The difference between the value resorts at Disney and the moderate resorts can be summarized in tea bags. All right, so at the value resorts, there is one restaurant. It's like a food court style, fast food, and you can get tea there. You can get a tea bag there, right? They have 2 types of tea bags. They have a black tea and they have a decaf black tea. They're Twinings tea, very good quality tea. Those are your 2 tea options, all right? You go to a moderate resort, there are 2 types of restaurants. There's one kind of quick service food court style, like at the value resorts. There's also a sit-down restaurant. But in that quick service restaurant, you can also get tea. But you might be able to get like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 flavors of tea. They have black, they have decaf black, they have a green, they might have a chamomile. You got a couple different options, all very great. Wonderful, moving on. Then you go to the deluxe resort. They have a quick service food court style restaurant, just like the moderate and the value resorts. They also have a sit down restaurant. They also will have a signature restaurant. They also have a lot of bars and lounges. Like there's a lot of different options for food. But at the quick service restaurant, just like at the value, just like at the moderate, they also have tea bags. But they don't have just like black and decaf black. Maybe with a green, maybe with a chamomile. They have like a whole box of tea. They got rooibos. They got a ginger green. They got a fruity berry burst herbal tea. All of a sudden there are like 8 to 10 tea flavors for you. And again, all of the tea, they're all Twinings tea. They're all very good quality tea. You can get that black tea and the decaf black tea across all 3 resorts. But the more money you pay per room, the more options there are for tea. And that is the huge difference between the value and deluxe resorts, because it's the same thing. You get the same thing at every single one of the hotels, but the amount, the display, because remember at the deluxe resort, the tea will be in like a box or a basket, rather than just a place where you can get cream and sugar. Everything is just amplified and fancier and nicer, but you still get the same thing. You still get tea. You still get the same quality tea. And that is a huge way to think about the differences. So if you're like, oh, I'm not going to get as much stuff if I stay in a value resort versus the deluxe resort, look, you're still going to be at the Disney properties, like enjoying yourself. You're still going to have the cast member level service, the Disney level customer service. You're still going to get a comfortable bed. You're still going to be surrounded by Disney. You're still going to be in the Disney bubble. You're still going to have food and drink options. It just won't be as many and as fancy as you would get at the deluxe resort. And like the thing about the fancy too, so at the value resorts, they have these big giant characters that decorate the whole property, right? These big giant Disney characters. It is so fun. There is music playing, there's color everywhere. It's just like a cornucopia of things for your eyes to look at the value resorts. Then you move to the moderate resorts, and the theming again is like chef's kiss Disney level theming, but it is a little bit more subtle and a little bit more refined. And rather than just big Disney characters, the moderate resorts are really themed around a particular area, and you can see that throughout the differentiation of all the different areas in a hotel. But then when you get to the deluxe resorts, we're now deluxe. So you will see things if you're looking for it of like a hidden Mickey, or like, oh, that's Cherry Tree Lane from Mary Poppins in that abstract watercolor in my room, but it's not quite in your face Disney. You're still immersed in Disney, but it is more sophisticated, more refined, fancier, more adult. So you're getting Disney at all of the hotels, but like the level of fanciness and sophistication increases the more money that you're spending at a hotel, which totally makes sense. I had a cousin who went to Disney for the first time with his young daughter, his wife, and his mother-in-law, and his mother-in-law treated the whole family, and she's a travel agent, and she treated everyone to the Grand Floridian. And I was talking to that cousin a little bit later, and he was like, it would have been cool actually to see more Disney stuff at the hotel. Like the hotel Grand Floridian was very nice, but it didn't really feel very Disney. And if he went to the All-Stars, right, he wouldn't have been walking distance to the Magic Kingdom the way you are at Grand Floridian, but it would have been in your face Disney, and maybe more appropriate for their 5-year-old daughter, So it's just a matter of you get the same thing, but the degree and level of fanciness increases the more money that you spend on the room. So that's why I think that thinking about the vibes of a hotel is really a good point, a good criteria point, a good criterion, if you will, for choosing a hotel. Because if you are looking now at the moderate resorts as your price point, that's the price that you feel comfortable paying, or perhaps actually the price that you're comfortable paying straddles value and moderate resort like it does for me, then you can look at the options that are available and just think like, which hotel do I gravitate towards the most? And this is why, especially when you are thinking about the distinction between the hotels, it's important to know that you do get all the same things, but that the level of sophistication or options increase as you move up price levels. So let's just go back to restaurants for a second. I've already kind of mentioned this, but I really want to emphasize this a little bit more. At the value resorts, and there are 5 of them, there is one main restaurant per hotel. All of those restaurants are basically the same. There really isn't any distinction between what you would get at Pop Century versus what you would get at All Star Sports, for example. This restaurant, quote unquote restaurant, is like a food court. And it, really specializes in things like pizzas and hot dogs and hamburgers, right? Like all very basic fare. Usually they have like one additional fancy adult meal. And like for my upcoming trip, I was looking at the menu and there's like a salmon and orzo dish, and I've had their fish there before and it's always been very, very good. So they have the one restaurant, it's a food court style, all very good. And they have one bar, and it's really like the pool bar. It's an outdoor bar where you can get a drink and watch the kids in the pool. Not like a creep, like as a parent, right? Like the value resorts are really designed for big families, right? Everything is meant for rough wear and tear, for example. These options are good. They're fine, right? You get to eat, you get to drink if you want to drink. That's wonderful. But if you want like a quiet, sophisticated glass of wine at the end of the day and just like have a quiet dinner where you're trying something new, you're not going to get that at the value resort. That's not what the value resorts are designed for. At the moderate resorts, you also have this quick service, kind of food court style place to pick up something. Usually there is a couple options on the menu that align with the theme and geographic area of the hotel. So at the Caribbean Beach Resort, for example, they'll have a jerk chicken bowl as well as like a cheeseburger, right? Which is kind of nice. However, at all the moderate resorts, they also have an additional dining experience that is a little bit more sophisticated. It's a sit-down restaurant usually, and they do have a bar. Sometimes those bars are close to the pool, but it is a bar that also you feel like you can sit outside and enjoy a beverage without actually having to watch the pool. Like it is close to the pool, but it doesn't feel like a pool bar in the same way that the value resorts do. So here actually you can get a nice cocktail at the end of the day, sit outside, enjoy that cocktail, and really just kind of consolidate and enjoy the end of your day, right? So you have a couple of those options. At the deluxe resorts, however, they also have a quick service. They also have a sit-down restaurant, obviously. Actually, let me say that a little bit differently. They also have a sit-down restaurant that it is a price point that is kind of like quote unquote affordable. Like it is like a sit-down restaurant, but it's not like the fancy dinner, like the fancy restaurant. But then actually, all of the deluxe resorts also have very fancy restaurants. In fact, the most expensive restaurants on Disney property are at the deluxe resort hotels. And so you can still go to the deluxe resort and eat at those restaurants. But if you're staying at the deluxe resort, you are a little bit closer. Your commute to that restaurant is a little bit shorter. But like actually I want to really drive this home because this is why I've spent so much time at the deluxe resorts, because I go for the fancy restaurants, because Disney wants you to go to these places. They want you to look at the deluxe resorts and think to yourself like, oh, maybe I'll save up and stay here one day. They want you to eat at these fancy restaurants. They want you to try all these things. So if you want a quiet night with a sophisticated glass of wine and a book at the end of your park days on your solo trip, the deluxe resorts are the places that will have those options available to you. And next week, I'm going to do an episode on the restaurants and the different, like, again, categories of restaurants, not talking specifically about each individual restaurant, but highlighting the different places that you can go to have those types of experiences. Pools is another big thing for me at Disney hotels. At the value resorts, they will have one big giant feature pool. And I think even in the map, they'll call it the kiddie pool. But even if they don't, it's certainly the kiddie pool. These pools are not deep. They for kind of a normal heighted adult, it goes up to about your knee. There are things that will like squirt, and there's big characters, and it's a really fun pool if you are like a 6-year-old. But if you if you are not a 6-year-old and you want to just like hang out at a pool and have a relaxing day, the value resort big pools are really not going to be the place for you. The value resorts also have what they call quiet pools. But the thing about the value resorts is that their quiet pools they're further away from the main pool. So what happens is usually they're just the pool, the more local pool for the families in the area to come and swim. So there isn't as much hoorah around those pools, but they aren't necessarily policed for being quiet. So again, like not really like a grown up, quote unquote, grown up place for like a swim and a sunbathe, of course you can do those things at those pools, but they're not really, that's not like really what they were designed for. Let's go over to the moderate resorts, because this is one of the reasons why I love moderate resorts, is because of their pools. So at all the moderate resorts, they also have a big pool. They don't call it a kiddie pool, but it is a bigger pool, and it has a water slide. I've been down all of them, I'm pretty sure. Definitely go down a water slide if you are there by yourself. Nobody will judge you, except maybe the 4-year-olds who skip you in line. And I know for me, I've had to be like, keep it in, Samantha, keep it in. She's a child. Even if she skipped you in line, it's fine. I just want to be like, oh, are those the rules? Anyway, I'm not gonna keep talking about that. So they all have a themed bigger pool. It is definitely doesn't feel like a kiddie pool, even though there are water slides, and that is definitely a pool that you could relax out every day. But with one exception, the moderate resorts also have small pools, small quiet pools. And like the value resorts, they're tucked in the blocks of buildings. And so they are really designed to be the pools for that kind of local area. but those pools aren't fun at all. They are really just like squares, or like at Port Orleans Riverside, there's like these interesting shapes because it's like they're in a bayou. And at the value resorts, the quiet, quote unquote, quiet pools still have stuff around them. So they're still quite entertaining. But the quiet pools at the moderate resorts are really, really quiet. Like every time I have gone to Disney, I have been in a quiet pool pretty much by myself. And I remember one time going over the Caribbean Beach Hotel on the Skyliner, and I looked down and there was one of the quiet pools, and there was like this man, this middle-aged man, just in the pool by himself floating. And I was like, yes, yes. Hashtag solo magic. That is the energy I want to bring to these quiet pools. And so if you do just want to spend a really quiet day by the pool, reading, listening to something, the moderate resorts have those options for you. And again, I'm from Canada. We get seasons, we get a winter. We get a fall, and sometimes just being able to lap up some vitamin D is really important at certain months of the year. And so I have gone just to lie in a quiet pool and really just like do that. Like it's so lovely to have those as options. And they are options at 3 of the 4 moderate resorts. Now, there isn't a quiet pool at Port Orleans French Quarter. There also isn't an additional sit-down restaurant at Port Orleans French Quarter. There's only the quick service for like main food. But this is why. So Port Orleans French Quarter and Port Orleans Riverside were designed to be essentially the same hotel. They were designed to tell different parts of the same kind of geographical story. And as such, the Port Orleans French Quarter, it was really designed to be like an annex of Port Orleans proper, like Port Orleans Riverside. So it only has one pool. It's much smaller, which is why the price is usually a little bit more than Port Orleans Riverside, because there are just fewer rooms. And rather than have a sit-down restaurant, an additional sit-down restaurant like you have at the different moderate resorts, they have a jazz bar and a cafe where you can get Mickey beignets, which you may have heard people talk about. So even though it doesn't have those extra things, it has things that are like that. They're equitable things, even if they're not equal things. And like just between you and me, you could probably walk over to Port Orleans Riverside and swim in one of the quiet pools. You're not technically supposed to pool hop, but because I think it was designed as the same hotel, and I mean, who's gonna drag you out if you're just quietly sitting by a pool? No one's gonna drag you out. Don't worry about that. Now, at the deluxe resorts, they also have a big main pool, and it has a taller water slide than the moderate resorts, and they are very cool big pools, and they're very busy. They have a pool bar and a restaurant next to it. Like, they're all really great, those big pools. And they also have quiet pools tucked in different places, but there aren't as many, in fact. Like, there's like 6 pools at Port Orleans Riverside, and I think there are 2, maybe 3 pools at Grand Floridian. And personally, I would think that if you're at Grand Floridian, you should have like more options of things like pools, but you don't. You also, if you're interested in spas, and I can do an episode or a bonus episode on the Grand Floridian Spa. I've been there a few times. At a lot of spas, they have pools, but the Grand Floridian doesn't have its own pool. Excuse me, the Grand Floridian Spa doesn't have its own pool that spa users can use, which I think is, I don't know, I think a missed opportunity. We could definitely have a better spa at Disney. We could definitely have a better spa at Disney. I mean, I love the Grand Floridian Spa. I've had some really great treatments there, but like, we could do it better for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit just about the structure of the hotel itself because, I mean, despite what this episode might suggest, there are more to the Disney hotels than food and pools, but you can hear what I am interested in. So, the moderate and value resorts are built like motel style, in that there's blocks of rooms, and those rooms all have corridors on the outside and no balconies. And again, it's like a little block of rooms that are about 2 to 4 stories depending on where you are. Now at the value resorts, all those blocks of rooms essentially look exactly the same. At the moderate resorts, however, there is more differentiation to the different blocks because they really try to immerse you in more of a geographical thematic area. So Port Orleans Riverside is an interesting example because it has a bit of a problematic backstory that you can definitely see through the rooms. So one side of the rooms look very swampy, workers type of cottage. And then by the time you get to like the end of the, like the big circle, it's all of a sudden you are like in the big house, like they're like mansion style and very fancy buildings, and it's like the owners rather than the workers. Anyway, it's a bit of a problematic backstory that we just have to put to the side when we are there, I guess. I mean, I stay at Port Orleans Riverside all the time, but the story in my head definitely I have to put a pause on. Okay, the deluxe resorts, however, they're all hotel style. So the corridors are on the inside. All of the rooms have balconies. It is much more, like I said, of a hotel style setup. Now, the one exception actually is the tower at the Coronado Resort, and the Coronado Resort is a moderate resort. But it also has this very big tower. And that tower, a lot of people say, is like staying in a deluxe resort at more of a moderate price. Now, Coronado has these like motel style small casita rooms as well. I actually quite like them. But this tower they built for conferences, and I'll talk more about that when I do the Coronado episode. But the tower is very much a hotel style. So if you're looking and you see, oh, well, here's a tower room at the Coronado, it's a lot more money. It's because it's a little bit more of a deluxe feel. Now, of course, all of the rooms, no matter which category you're staying in, has a bed. Surprise. It has a bed. It has like shampoo and conditioner and body wash. It has a fridge. It has a Keurig machine. It has everything that you want. But everything just gets a little bit fancier with more options, the more money that you pay per room. Now, across the 3 All-Stars at the value resorts, All-Star Sports, All-Star Movies, All-Star Music, they are essentially the same hotel. All-Star Sports is usually a little bit cheaper, so you might think like, oh, well, what makes it different? Nothing. I just think it's not as popular of a hotel. But literally, there is no difference for that extra $5 or $10 between All-Star Sports and All-Star Movies. So if that's your price range and you're like, oh, well, should I spend that extra $10 and go to movies? Like, sure, do that. If that's what you want to do that, because you're not getting anything more. Now, across I'm pretty sure all of the hotels, sometimes you'll see price options for a preferred location that's a little bit more money, and the preferred locations are a little bit closer to transportation or to food or to the gift store, things like that. So just know that that is what you're paying for. It's the location closer to the main stuff, the main building. So those are some distinctions, crude, rough distinctions between the 3 categories of hotels. But here's the thing, when you were staying in a Disney hotel, you're also getting a lot of the same stuff. So number 1, you are in the Disney bubble. That for me is really important. all of the cast members, all the staff members, like they know you're at Disney. It's not like you're at just some random Holiday Inn and you're like, oh, I'm in Orlando for a conference and I just thought I would check out what Disney is, you know? Like, no, they're like, hey, have you checked out Magic Kingdom today? Which rides have you gone on? Like, they are there for you to hype you up. And I know whenever I've taken an Uber back to the airport and the Uber driver is just like normal, like not a Disney person, I was like, oh, yeah. Wah, wah, wah. That's one of the reasons why I actually like taking the Mears bus transportation, because at least you get to be in the Disney bubble for like another 40 minutes, you know, rather than have to pretend you're like a normal non-Disney adult in an Uber with a driver. So yeah, the Disney bubble I think is really important. I also think that the Disney bubble means it's extremely, extremely safe. So I belong, as I've mentioned a few times, to a Facebook group about solo Disney travel. It's one of the highlights of my social media landscape. And a lot of people will ask about safety. And, I was sitting on the Skyliner with a woman once and she said, yeah, as like a woman traveling by myself, I feel like Disney can be one of the safest places I can go. And I kid you not, that was the very first time I ever considered that safety would be an issue at Disney. And I have traveled a lot on my own, both for work and for pleasure. When I've traveled to certain places, I'll wear a wedding ring in order, although I'm single, I'll wear a wedding ring to just be like, I don't know, some sort of like patriarchy shield. Not really. Ugh, gross. But like I've never got those like weird vibes, especially as a woman or as someone who's femme, of just feeling like their safety could be compromised. Never, ever, ever. So I really would not think about that at all. Or not, think about it if you want. Don't stress about it, but don't feel like it needs to be a number one consideration. The Disney bubble is very, very safe. Because you're in the Disney bubble too, and this is also so important for me when I travel, especially because I'm traveling internationally. When you are staying at one of the Disney hotels, your room key, your park ticket, and potentially, if that's what you want, your charging account is all attached to your Magic Band, which is like the bracelet you wear. You can also connect it to your phone. I use a Magic Band. I actually have the backup on my phone, but my Magic Band is my main one. And that means that you don't need to bring your wallet. You don't need to bring cash. And again, like for me as a Canadian, I don't need to exchange cash. You don't need to schlep around your debit card. You don't need to bring your Visa or your MasterCard. You can do everything with this one piece of technology. And that makes it just so much easier to navigate the parks and spend more money, which is one of the reasons why the Magic Band was invented. So that Magic Band gets you into your room. It gets you into the park. It's connected to your tickets, and you can buy your souvenirs on it. You can pay for your dinners on that. It's great, and that should not be underestimated. Now, remember when I said don't worry too much about getting to a park or whatever, like don't worry too much about location? And it's because, if you remember, Disney is essentially a city-size hotel. There is a transportation system that gets you around that city because Disney wants you to be able to get to the parks. They want you to be able to go to a deluxe resort and have a fancy meal. They want you to go to all these places. And so they have created a network of transportation for you to get from here to there. So the buses are the main transportation source, no matter which hotel you stay at. The buses are clean buses, cast members, air conditioned. They're all great. It's not an additional price. It's not like a city bus. They will take you from hotel to park to like they'll do all the things. They're great. And if you're like, oh no, I don't want to take a bus, that's weird, I'm just going to walk from my hotel to Hollywood Studios. Well, you can't walk from your hotel. Let's say you can't walk from Pop Century to Hollywood Studios. Like that, these aren't walks you can do. You have to use the transportation, and the bus system is really, really great. However, the more money you spend on the hotels, the more transportation options are available to you. Not always. Buses are still the number one transportation for the majority of transportation to and from hotels. But you also have the Skyliner. Everyone loves the Skyliner, which is an aerial transportation system. Pop Century Art of Animation, which is some of the reasons why those hotels cost more than the All-Star hotels, are connected by the Skyliner. Caribbean Beach, which is one of the reasons why it's my favorite moderate, and the Riviera, which is a deluxe resort. They're all connected to the Skyliner that can get you to Hollywood Studios or Epcot very, very quickly. There's also Disney boats. Disney boats are my favorite. There are a few hotels that you can get to a couple of the parks via watercraft, which is awesome, or to Disney Springs, which is also awesome. So if you have those available to you, make sure you use them. And then the other form of transportation is walking for certain deluxe resorts. So you can walk to Hollywood Studios from the Yacht and Beach Club Deluxe Resort. Definitely. You can also walk to Epcot from those two hotels, but you can't walk to Animal Kingdom. Like, you can't walk to Magic Kingdom. So use the transportation that's available. That's one of the reasons why you stay in the Disney bubble. Okay, there's one more thing I wanted to say before I say goodbye for the day. And I can see from the time already that I have not done any better of consolidating this information. I have also edited myself mentally. Like, there's so much more I can talk about with hotels. Yeah, all right. Well, let me know if you want to hear them. Anyway, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about, and that was good neighbor hotels. And some of you have may actually been really wanting me to talk about that the whole time. You're like, when she can talk about good neighbor hotels. Okay, so good neighbor hotels are hotels that are on the Disney property, but they are not run by Disney. So they have some perks, like Disney perks, because they are on the property. So a lot of them are close to Disney Springs, and they'll have shuttle services to Disney Springs or the different parks. A couple of them actually have character dining, like the Four Seasons, for example, has a character breakfast where you can meet Minnie and Goofy, and I think Mickey as well. So a couple of them have those perks, but they are still just like regular old hotels that are just close to Disney. They are a lot cheaper than the Disney hotels for sure. So if your price budget, if your budget is at the value resort level, you could actually get quote unquote a better quality end quote, of a hotel if you stay at a good neighbor hotel, right? You could get maybe just a nicer room than you would at an All-Star Sports, right? So that is an option for you. Now, I personally don't like good neighbor hotels because to me, like a Marriott is a Marriott is a Marriott, it bursts the Disney bubble for me. And as soon as I leave the main Disney area, I do feel like the notion of safety for me increases. Like, even if it's still very safe, because it's still very safe. Like, let me just say that. To me, I would start thinking about safety more. And I want to come into my hotel room at the end of the night and see Disney characters. Whereas that is not really what the good neighbor hotels are about, right? That's not what it is. So for me, a good neighbor hotel is not a great option. And again, if I'm going by myself and I just want this magical Disney vacation, I want to come into my room and I want to see Tiana or Sebastian or, I don't know, other characters. I just want to see and be in Disney magic. And that's what I hope that you also get if you are going to Disney by yourself. I hope you feel that magic as one of the draws back. But if you are considering it, I hope you know from this whole big thing that there are very few wrong choices that you can make when you're there, because they are all choices that A, you can learn about yourself, B, are still Disney choices, which are better than real world choices, and C, all part of the magic of Disney and the magic of being able to travel solo to Disney. All right. That was long, but I love hotels. Again, I've been holding a lot back, and that's why I was like, you know what, let's just spend July and August, and I can talk about all the value resorts, all the moderate resorts, the pros and cons of each, the quiet pools of all of them. I'll post some pictures, etc., etc. Oh, that reminds me, make sure you follow me on Instagram, as I've said, Disney_solo_magic, but I will post some pictures and some small like videos and stuff of my previous trips at the different hotels so that you can maybe see what I'm talking about when I say quiet pool. It's just going to be a whole grid of me in quiet pools. All right. Okay. So next week, I'm going to be talking about the different categories of restaurants. And then I'm going to do 5 weeks of talking about the 4 different parks: Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Animal Kingdom, and Hollywood Studios, and then Disney Springs, and some kind of tips, tricks that you should kind of think about or keep in mind when you are planning a day by yourself at one of those parks. I am so excited to have this podcast, to be able to talk with you about it, but I really hope that you get a chance to talk with me about your experiences too. So make sure you connect so that we can maybe do some bonus episodes with you and you can tell me why you love Good Neighbor Hotels, and I will smile and agree with you and say that's wonderful information for other people, but I will not be using a Good Neighbor hotel. Alternatively, if you want to come on the podcast and tell me how wonderful deluxe resorts are, and I can just sit here and be like, can we best friends? Can we be best friends? Can I give you like $100 and just stay in your bathtub when you go? We can do that too. No problem, solos. All right, we will talk to you next week. Bye.